This is Dr. Shweta Patel, and I am the founder of Gaya Wellness, virtual women's healthcare, and I am going to be talking about semaglutide today, specifically some pretty common myths and whether they're accurate or whether they are indeed myths. So let's start with semaglutide. First of all, is a medication it mimics a receptor in our body. Basically, it's like playing musical chairs. So using this medication is kind of like we have more people utilizing or playing the game. And the way it works is it attaches to these receptors in our body so that they're more active. And they do more of what their natural function is. So what is the natural function of the glucagon-like peptide receptors? Their natural function depends on where they are. We have them in our brain and we have them in our digestive tract, specifically our gut or intestines, our pancreas, obviously, and also our liver. And so depending on where they're acting or where they're activated will determine what kind of impact they have in your body. So Ozempic doesn't just work, or semaglutide doesn't just work by one mechanism of action, though it does the same thing in different parts of your body. When it is acting on your brain, it creates a earlier sensation of satiety, meaning you don't feel hungry. And oftentimes you are not inclined to eat, and several hours can go by where you just don't feel like eating. Not only does it sometimes make you not feel like eating, but cravings that you may have had typically tend to be dampened or go away. I know a lot of patients who are in my program will say that they don't crave alcohol anymore, or they don't crave certain kinds of food like sweets or junk food, which is a very liberating feeling for them because that's something they've always struggled with in the past. Another thing that happens on Ozempic, and I think it's because of this, is what I call the clutter or the conversation in your brain over food seems to go quiet. And this is what I particularly love for my patients on this medication, is that a lot of women who are suffering from excessive weight gain, they may be starting out with a relationship with food that is not ideal. And sometimes they don't trust themselves around food. And not just to say like they always want to eat. That's actually not it at all, but more like being preoccupied with not eating, being concerned that they might eat too much, being concerned that they may fall off the wagon, or they might need to eat now before they get super hungry later. And when you think about how much time and energy goes into this thought process throughout the day, it is incredible when that noise, actually exactly, when that food noise goes away, there is a really, really liberating calm that kicks in, and women actually finally feel secure and they trust themselves around food again, which is really where I think the greatest win is when you are on this weight loss program. The ability to just be able to go anywhere without having to plan for food, plan around food, plan to not eat food, like on vacations, at work. You're able to make decisions better for your body and on the spot, meaning coming back to being more mindful around food. Eating because food is a nourishment source, not because it is an emotional, source of happiness or avoidance of negative feelings. So that's how it works on the brain. How it works on the digestive tract. It works on the gut and actually slows down gastric emptying and your peristalsis. So women will feel, first and foremost, a lot of nausea, especially if they don't take this medication correctly. And they will feel a lot of constipation or slowing of their bowel movements. And days can go by before they actually have the urge to have a bowel movement. That can be bothersome to a lot of people, but it is part of the way this medication works. If things are backed up and things aren't moving forward, that's another reason why you are not likely to want to eat, because things kind of feel like they're still sitting there. And that can sometimes cause reflux or burping, but the predominant side effect is nausea. And the way it works on our pancreas, it actually stimulates our pancreatic cells to secrete more insulin. And this is why it is used as a medication for diabetics who have developed insulin resistance and their pancreas is no longer able to keep up with their insulin needs, or their pancreas from the get-go was not producing enough insulin. So type 1, type 2. It also works on the liver, and this is how I believe that it works like a metabolic reset. It works on the liver to actually reduce your release of glucagon. That is one of the most fundamental things that our body does as soon as we need sugar. And this could be because we're hungry, we're starving, we are in a state of stress, we are running from a mountain lion. Our body needs an instant release of sugar, basic sugar, so glucose, and the quickest way to achieve that is to tap into our stores in our liver in the form of just carbohydrates. And what glucagon does is it triggers that mechanism. So this is part of the reason why when you are on a diet, what's working against you can be this mechanism. This is the reason why eating not enough can trigger or not achieve weight loss, because it's like a paradoxical. Why is this happening? I'm not eating and yet I'm still gaining weight, or I'm not eating and I'm not losing weight. It is a protective mechanism because when we were still crawling on fours and living in caves, that not eating meant a bad thing. Not eating was never I'm trying to get skinny because I want that caveman to like me. And so that protective mechanism is there so that we can continue to run for our life, and our brain can continue to function and make good choices like that cliff, not this one. And so, however, now in the future or in the present, when we're not eating, it's usually because we are starving ourselves or we are cutting back on our calories for our diet. Our body isn't distinguishing that goal, and so it still does that action of releasing carbohydrates broken down into sugar into our bloodstream. The sheer fact that that happens is not ideal for the purposes of weight loss, but the quickness with which our blood sugar goes up is also what's not ideal. And so glucagon is useful, but it is kind of working against you when it comes to your weight loss goals. And part of the reason why women feel like they're stuck when they hit a certain age, and no matter how much exercise they're doing or how much dieting they're doing, this tendency to have that response whenever we are trying to lose weight is what prevents you from, despite all your good measures, getting that weight off, feeling stuck. So, and lastly, it works a little bit. It's not very well known, but it also works on your fat cells. We don't really know how the mechanism works, but it essentially does. So what are some of the myths related to semaglutide? And there are a bunch. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there, which is why I think that it's really important to start this medication with some kind of medical guidance, and not to just kind of have it prescribed to you and then you sort of manage it on your own and come back to see your healthcare provider several months later. Although that is how diabetics use it, but for the purposes of weight loss, it really does need to be monitored because of some of the impacts that it can have early on as well as down the line. But myth number one is that it will be a form of, it's a cheating route, right? Like, it's like, oh, you're fat and you don't want to work out and you don't want to put in the energy and effort it takes to lose weight. So people who are on Ozempic, they're just cheating. I call it the Ozempic walk of shame. It's almost like when you are on Ozempic and you're losing weight, you don't even want to tell anybody how you're losing weight because you feel kind of like you're a cheat. And that is not true. Frankly speaking, most of my patients that are on this medication have tried. They've tried everything, and it seems like nothing is ever going to work, and they're going to be stuck at this new body weight. And they're kind of right. Like, they are really set this way. And it's not that nothing will work, but it's that they're going to have to take some more dramatic measures and really work on building up their muscle and increasing their basal metabolic rate to actually kickstart that metabolic, set point that they have. Whereas with semaglutide, they're able to finally overcome some of that like resistance your body feels to it. So it's not cheating. First of all, we're talking about already trying. They're working with genetics, and they are working with a lot of stress, and they have tried things in order to lose weight. And usually when they've not been successful is when they resort to using Ozempic or semaglutide. I keep using them the same way. I'm trying to be more generalized because Ozempic is not the only medication. Semaglutide comes in different forms, brand names. So if I use them back and forth, that's what's up. Another thing is they think that, or another myth is that semaglutide is for diabetics, and so people should really not be using it for weight loss. They are kind of stealing it from the diabetics. And I really can't disagree more. I think that the problem isn't that there's a resource that one, group of people deserve more than the other. I think that resource should be made more available. That's the issue. We shouldn't be fighting amongst it. And the reason why I feel this way is because, yes, diabetics will need this medication. They're farther along in their journey of their health not being so well. And so, yes, they absolutely need this medication. However, there are multiple other medications that are available to them to use. So it's not like if they can't have access to semaglutide that they would be without any kind of treatment, number one. Number two, why I really do think that this should not even be a concern or an issue is because I openly discourage it. I say that if you're used to going to doing intense Peloton classes or intense CrossFit exercises, really that is going to send the same message to your body as you sitting on the I-4 for several hours and being just pissed off. You're creating a sense of stress. Whereas if you are doing weightlifting and resistance training, you are going to actually maintain muscle mass, which is important because you're starting to eat less calories. And one of the things your body will do to cheat with you is it'll start breaking down muscle. That's so much easier than breaking down fat. And you don't want that to happen. And so I usually recommend doing weight training so that you can sustain your muscle. And then once you are done with your weight loss goals, then you can kind of work back up to building muscle and really getting the physique that you want. But when you're on this journey with semaglutide, it is fat loss, and that is going to take place kind of in whatever shape that looks like for you. So Ozempic face is not really a thing just with Ozempic, and frankly, it can come back. Just, I guess, start eating, way more than you burn, and you will kind of go back to that. Which leads me to the last myth. You will regain the weight as soon as you come back off the medication. Yes and no. The reason why it's a yes is because when you stop the medication, its impact on your body stops. But that doesn't mean you have to start acting the way you did before you were on Ozempic. And in fact, one of the parts of our program, where a large part of our program is spending time actually connecting with our thoughts and being mindful of the changes in the way you're thinking when you're on Ozempic. For the first time, women realize they actually have the motivation to stop before they jump into something to eat and actually think about what they want to eat. And it's like, whoa, I actually have preferences, and I actually have choices that I want to make that are related to what's good for my body, and I can slow down enough to understand those choices. And I actually don't like eating first thing in the morning just because if I don't eat now, I'm not going to be able to eat later. And I actually don't like eating a large portion all at once because then I feel crummy afterwards. Or I do like eating just one meal all day, and I don't like eating all throughout the day because that's supposed to be how you're supposed to do it. Learning what is good for you and learning good nutritional habits is part of the practice that we want to instill in you while you're on semaglutide, and you don't have to worry about also trying to lose weight. So when you come off the program, if done correctly, if you're following it with like a healthcare provider that's really guiding you to make sure that you are also learning habits that you will then continue when you come off the semaglutide, then you will not gain the weight back, because you will continue to practice the same good behavioral patterns and mindfulness that you were able to when you're on this medication. It's kind of like saying when you finally realize that you like sushi, and before you were just avoiding it, you never even had tried it, you were just avoiding it, you're like, I don't know. And now you know what it's like. So even after you are not able to find sushi, you're still gonna like it. That was the worst analogy I've ever come up with in my life, and I like to think that I make up some pretty good analogies. Bottom line is, learning good habits while you're on this medication is part of the victory in this medication, because you don't have to worry about counting, calories and macros and making sure you're eating a certain amount and making sure you're exercising a certain amount. There is quiet, and you can actually focus on doing things like, I will eat when I'm hungry, and I will stop when I'm not hungry, and I will eat this because it feels better in my stomach than this. And then the longer you're able to sustain those habits, the longer you will be able to continue the weight off. That sounds like every diet's problem to me. So it's not exclusive to just semaglutide. So to wrap up, semaglutide, it's a safe medication. It is not something that's going to make your heart explode, or, it's not some kind of a quick, cheap fix way of losing weight like back in the day when you could take certain, over-the-counter medications that made your heart rate go through the roof. It works intrinsically to really correct your metabolic response to blood sugar or to sugar, which is why it's used for diabetics and why it's so effective in weight loss. There are myths about it, such as it's cheating, it is going to create a certain kind of Ozempic face, or that you're going to bounce back and gain all the weight back, and those are indeed myths. You have ways of either not having that happen, or those are not things that are exclusive to being on this medication. So if you're considering it, if you've been struggling with weight loss, if you are dealing with morbid obesity or any kind of obesity, and you want to be able to successfully lose weight, I would definitely encourage you to talk to your healthcare provider about getting on a semaglutide program. I would also encourage you to do it with guidance so that you lose weight in a sustainable way, in a healthy manner, and you have the ability to develop good habits while you're losing weight, so that you can come off of it and continue those without your training wheels. All right. So let me go through here and see if there's any questions, and let's see. And then I'll sign off, because I'm pretty sure nobody wants to hear any more about this. So we have, Ashley Rogers has to say, by helping people lose weight, it is preventing type 2 diabetes. That is correct. Dr. Patel, can you talk about ways to ensure you aren't losing excessive muscle while on semaglutide? I think we kind of addressed that, but just to reiterate, weightlifting. And no, ladies, you're not going to become a bodybuilder. Trust me, women are actually trying to become bodybuilder physiques, and it takes so much effort, because you have to eat so many calories and work out with intense weightlifting in order to be able to put muscle on. So when we're doing weightlifting, we're basically just trying to keep our muscle, and maybe a little bit of muscle growing, but predominantly we are losing the fat around that muscle, and so that muscle is becoming more visible. And so it's like, hey, I'm here, but it's not like bulking up. So if that's your excuse, well, let's just acknowledge it. It's an excuse. Lifting weights is not going to turn you into Popeye. Okay. Next question or comment. Let's see. What helps with eating while being depressed and having high cholesterol? I have a habit of eating once a day, and I want to do better. That is an excellent question. So I think focusing on the root cause of why you are eating. And I think the viewer actually acknowledged it themselves, which is eating while you're depressed. You are trying to potentially avoid the negative feelings related to being depressed. And food, especially the way we associate with food, is that it gives you positive feelings. It gives you that dopamine rush, and it reminds you of the time you had a birthday party and you got to eat cake, or pumpkin spice and how it's fall, or chocolate and how it's just always been around with amazing things like celebrations and wins in life. Bottom line is, we have a neural pathway associated with food that's usually positively reinforcing. I'm pretty sure that if there was something that you ate and it caused you to vomit for the next 4 days, even if it was chocolate, you'd be like, I'm never touching that again, because you've now generated a negative reinforcement pathway. But when we are down, central nervous system goes down. That is what depression is. It is emotionally experienced, but the chemical logic behind it is that our brain doesn't have as much serotonin as it needs, either because we naturally weren't producing enough, genetics, or because we are over consuming what we have, life, stress, high functioning people. And so when that happens, your body is going to experience the impact of low serotonin. And we try to kind of just figure out ways to fix that temporarily. And if we can just keep doing the short fix over and over and over and over and over again, we might be able to, at least for a little bit longer, feel like we're okay. That is the logic behind wanting to eat when you're down. Now, there are some people who actually, when they are down, they don't eat. They lose their appetite. And so I will distinguish that as both are actually a sign of depression: when you are emotionally eating, or when you are emotionally starving yourself because you're too stressed to eat. You can't even think about food. Some people have that response. Some people's response to happiness is that they don't feel like eating, right? Think about when you're like first met somebody new and you're in love and you're like, I'm too excited to eat. Some people are like, I'm too stressed to eat. And same goes for the opposite. If you associate positive with food, then you're going to want to eat more when you are not feeling positive. And so correcting what's creating that deficit for you in terms of those chemical pathways that need to function better is what probably will help with the tendency to eat when you're depressed. And then as far as how the cholesterol goes and eating, only a certain time in the day, I think that, again, going back to addressing the root cause will allow for you to then maybe start practicing better food choices, not just practicing better choices when to eat food, how much to eat, what kind of food to eat, and then let that hopefully trickle its way down into better cholesterol, better body fat percentage, and so on and so forth. Okay? All right. I agree. What if you want to jumpstart weight loss, like just 10 to 15 pounds? Can you use semaglutide? Absolutely. And again, because there are several women out there, they get to their 40s and they can't make that weight budge. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are morbidly obese. They may be trying to lose weight actively and there might be some success, but then they can't seem to get to their goal weight. And again, it just means that you'll be on it for a shorter period of time. It does not mean you don't have to have, though insurance may disagree with me, but there isn't a requirement that you are a certain extreme level of overweight in order to use this medication. I do think that if you have a normal body composition and weight, and at least my cutoff is like, if you are not overweight and if you have not already tried to do things to lose weight, I am not going to accept you into the weight loss program, because there are people who have, eating disorders and body dysmorphic disorder where they want to lose weight even if it's not medically necessary, or if it's not something that requires a big gun like semaglutide. But 10 to 15 pounds, for somebody who's like maybe a 5'2", that can be a decent amount of weight. And again, if there are other conditions that you're experiencing because of that weight, like you are pre-diabetic, you are developing high blood pressure, then it becomes even more important, and it kind of validates the use of it. Hope that answered that. And can age be a factor on semaglutide effectiveness? That is an excellent question. I think that age most definitely can be a factor, because it's a factor on everything. I mean, find me one thing that age doesn't impact. But that doesn't necessarily mean it is a bad thing. The way I would look at it is, if you're trying to lose weight at 50, it's probably going to be a little bit harder than if you were maybe 40. Barring, isolating for variables. Like, I'm like, well, I'm 50 now, I'm like, a bodybuilder, so it's much easier for me to lose weight. If you're the same person, same body composition, you're trying to lose weight at 40, I think you'll probably be more successful at 40 than you would be at 50. With that being said, you will probably be more successful losing weight on semaglutide than if you were not on semaglutide at that age. So controlling for you and yourself, even if age may be somewhat of a, it may impact the efficacy of it, I don't think it's going to impact the efficacy of it sufficient enough to make it ineffective. And there's always going to be people who it doesn't work for. I have not met, that many, but some people, they just don't either respond to it, they just don't tolerate it. And so, there's outliers like that. But we don't, or as a physician, I don't use age as a, or getting older as a cutoff for qualifying for using it. All right. I think that was it. I mean, wow, this has been really long, and I can talk, so I know. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, this is Dr. Shweta Patel with Gaya Wellness, a virtual women's healthcare platform. If you would like to learn more information, you can always visit GayaWellness.org. We also have a very healthy and prolific Facebook group, the Gaya Wellness Forum, and you can also check out our YouTube channel and our blog on our website for more educational resources. You can also make a visit, book an appointment with me virtually through the platform. And for anything else, there's American Express. Take care.